Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 321 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and a two-time author. Our second book is called From Letters to Leaders, Redefining New Member Education and Leveraging Belonging to Eliminate Hazing. So go and pick up that book today on Amazon. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring college students together. Fun fact, I would not be caught dead on a stage speaking to 4,000 students as an undergraduate when I was at the University at Buffalo. This is not a skill that you're just born with inherently. You just come out of the womb and you're a great speaker. This is something that you perfect over years and decades of work and seeing what works and what doesn't work. So if you're a college student listening right now and your public speaking skills are not up to par or where you want them to be, you can always improve them. Find a great coach like Dr. Woolf, and I tell you what, you are going to get results. I promise you. It's just something you have to work at. So don't be frustrated if right out of the gate your first talk isn't, the masterful TEDx talk that you see on stage. Understand that those TEDx talks that you're looking at on YouTube, those have been rehearsed for years and sometimes decades to get to the point where you're comfortable enough to give a talk like that. So anybody can do it with enough practice and enough work. Now, let's talk to the master. Dr. Reesa Woolf is a TED Talk trainer, a worldwide keynote speaker, and a #1 best-selling author. Reesa has trained 3,000 clients in Fortune 500 companies to master persuasive writing and presenting and to deliver excellent talks and presentations. She is efficient with her time, she is extremely professional, and she goes above and beyond with all of her clients. Here are some other facts that I think are going to really blow you away. The American Management Association, she's a senior trainer. Lee Hecht Harrison Division, Executive Career Counseling, also a senior trainer. A convention keynote speaker. Wharton faculty invited her to teach them train the trainer. She's got a PhD in psychology, a master's degree in speech and psychology. She's a professor at Johns Hopkins University, the United States Naval Academy, the University of Maryland, and she was even press secretary at Hawaii's gubernatorial campaign. Welcome to the show, Dr. Woolf.
I know how much you help people. It is a pleasure for me to be here with you.
I do try to help people. That is what I am all about. And you know what? I just feel like if I help other people, the way that the world works is just good things happen to you. I've learned this over time. And so I just freely give, and I'm telling you, great things will happen to you too. You just have to help other people. It's just that simple. So, all right, let's get into it. I know our audience, they want to know a little bit more about your background. And so for your undergraduate experience, you chose the University of Maryland, go Terps, in speech and psychology. So I'm wondering, what made the University of Maryland your choice?
Because I didn't know nothing about nothing. I grew up in a small town. I grew up in a small town. Everybody in Baltimore. Everyone went to University of Maryland. I went, oh, okay. I mean, some of the smart kids were applying elsewhere. I knew I could never get into the good schools, or I thought I couldn't, certainly. And I'm more of a creative than that. So I went to University of Maryland, and it turned out that I was a massive student leader. My natural leadership skills, I really kind of bloomed in college. And this is, looking back, I can tell you that all the things you've heard about people my age are true. They said, what are you going to major in? And the choices were repeatedly a nurse, a teacher, a secretary, or a mom. And we knew that that was truth. And I can tell you why I know everyone believed it was true, because of the 25 speech therapy majors, 20 of us were the women student leaders. Wow. So once I graduated from school, and the first week on the job as a speech therapist, after being this massively significant person who I really am, I thought, oh, I haven't made the wrong career decision. And I spent 10 years going on informational interviews to find out what are the even options. I had no idea. So not only did that help me get on my path to self-actualization and getting work that matches me, but it also, I have so much experience about so many different kinds of work and companies and locations and the way people interact, that pretty much what happens as you get older is that everything that has happened to you comes together. And that's why I think I'm so good at being a TED Talk trainer. And yes.
That's a fantastic story. I love that you're talking about self-actualization. I mean, right there is Maslow's hierarchy in action, right? So, I mean, I absolutely love that. The goal is for everybody to be working on self-actualization. Maslow looked at some of those lower levels of that pyramid and said, you know what? You need food and shelter and some other things in order to get self-actualization. So if you're a leader in a student organization right now, you got to be looking after your members in your organization and make sure they're well taken care of. Make sure they have food, make sure they have rest, make sure they have shelter, make sure that they have love and belonging. All of these things are really critical if you want your brothers and sisters to reach the pinnacle of self-actualization and actually do what God put them on this earth to do. And for Dr. Woolf, it's helping with TEDx talks. So I absolutely love it. And you've trained over 3,000 professionals to be engaging speakers who inspire and influence their listeners. And you have over 20 years of experience doing that kind of work. Tell our audience, I mean, why have you dedicated your life to this cause?
I want to say one more thing about self-actualization, and then I will answer that.
Go for it.
Self-actualization is, what are you good at that it's easy for you? What are the best courses, easiest courses for you in college? What are your hobbies? Do those things for work. That is self-actualization. And the second thing I want to say is Maslow made it quite clear. You don't stick there. You know, there's sometimes I went through a period like 10 years ago where I was down to I was already doing stuff and getting toward it, but I came down to baseline. Yeah. When the recession hit, it was like, oh, my entire world's changed. So just know, don't get angry at yourself when you're jumping up and down, because that's what humans do. But now, what is it I like about being a TED Talk trainer? I am quite a good speaker. And once I was, I got to be a trainer to train people. When I was in front of adults, I knew I wasn't going to be teaching kids how to say. Well, once I got in front of adults, and because by then I went to so many informational interviews that people were inviting me to work for them. I would never ask for a job. They were inviting me. I went, I'm really good at this. Maybe I'll teach people how to go on job searches. And particularly, I always had in mind to help people look at what is it pleases them in doing that for work. And so I did that a whole lot. And I lost my train of thought. Why am I TED Talk? So what I found was, once I got in front of people and I started getting A's and 5 stars and all of this stuff, I went, man, I'm good enough. I can make the big bucks and be a speaker at conventions, which I did. But I want to tell you that was fun. I was excellent. Got a lot of it. Spoke to Ford International in Dearborn, Michigan. Very, very successful. But I kept on at that point teaching adults public speaking skills. And what I realized is I can get in front of others and be a keynote speaker at a convention, but my better skill that I like even better, that I'm brilliant at, I can make anyone in the room a keynote speaker. I have a doctorate in psychology. I have lived it myself. I'm actually a writer. And so the bottom line is, why do I like it? I'm really good at it. Yep. And the reason I'm good at it is that I have a mind that sees the forest and the trees. So I can see what they have to do. When I meet people really fast, I know all they have to do. And so I have their goal, but my important skill is I know how to get them there. I'm really a strong teacher. So, and some people need to be pushed. Some people need to be asked. Some people need to be coerced. There's just a whole lot of ways, but I make people do it. So in all these seminars with all these thousands of people, no matter what personality, they ended up being able to speak without fear.
Amazing.
So why I love it so much is very similar to Mike, is to know that I'm a catalyst in someone else's life, and their life is better. They make more money. They're more successful. Because when you get over public speaking fear, that same crazy that has made you fearful, those tormenting thoughts affect you when you're at a party walking up to someone.
Yeah.
When you're in class not wanting to raise your hand, or when you're doing an internship or your first job, when you go, God, I have an idea. Oh, I shouldn't say it. And then someone else takes the idea. So I know that their lives are better because of it. And by the way, I don't cover over speaking fear. It is eliminated.
I love it. And you're absolutely right. I mean, once you get over that fear and you get over that hump, things become attainable that might not have been attainable before. And it's just so interesting how that spills over into other areas of your life. I mean, I'm going for a doctorate now, and obviously the professor is calling on me. They know that they can choose me at any time, and I'm going to speak my mind because they know what I do for a living. So it's like if nobody else is raising their hand, they're like, "All right, Mike," and so they give me the microphone. But sometimes when you give a speaker the microphone, you might not get the microphone back.
Yes. Oh, yeah. That's something I nail people in 1 second. You have to be concise and succinct, or no one will listen to you.
That's right. You got to be concise and succinct. So it's just funny how it spills over into other areas of your life when you're a speaker. But since you're such an expert, I mean, there are many people listening right now. They would rather die, literally, than speak on a stage in front of a big crowd. I mean, they would just crawl into a hole and die. So what are some tips for our listeners to remove that fear and perform well in front of an audience?
I'm going to tell you the typical things that are in people's heads that make them nuts. Because we have two voices in our head. Their inner wisdom knows you're good and you should do it, and you're only there to help people. You're not trying to take advantage. You're not shoving anything down people's throats. You know that you could do this, and you can't understand, why am I so scared? It's because when you think of it, your other mind goes, well, I don't know. Remember when you were young and you'd get that speech and everyone laughed at you in class? Remember your freshman year? So that's one thing. And the second thing I'll address is fear of making mistakes in front of others, being humiliated. They're going to see I don't know what I'm talking about, or I really am a faker. So do you like those, first of all?
I do like those. I think that's incredibly important. I think everyone has that imposter syndrome that somehow they're going to be discovered if they make a mistake on stage or something like that. The reality is I've made thousands of mistakes on stage. I'm going to continue to. Most of the time, the audience doesn't even know I made a mistake.
Absolutely.
and you know what, it's a learning opportunity. I mean, that's really what life is all about. It's trial and error. It's trying something. If it doesn't work, the joke lands flat. Okay, so I'm not going to do that joke anymore. It's very simple. And eventually you find your rhythm, you find what works.
So let me address those two, and then I'm going to add on there what happens if a joke goes flat, because clearly that's valuable. Okay, the first, so this is something you can do when you're in class or when you're about to speak, is you write down what you're going to say next. Because as I'm really involved in the first answer, pretty much the second one goes out of my head.
Right.
So the first one is thinking, oh my God, that happened before. I hope that doesn't happen again. My mind went blank that time. What I'd like you all to do, anyone listening, is write down who you are today, because that did happen. It's not that it didn't happen. It did happen. But I know for me, a lot of the things I did in my 20s, I did the very best I could, but I was young and dumb. So I can forgive myself and go, well, I truly didn't know any better. It's not like I tried to mess up. But who I am today is, and then you write just a bulleted list, or you can write yourself a paragraph of who I am today is, I know things. I speak to small groups easily. I can speak to one person, or if I'm in a club at school, if I'm in a meeting at work, I can speak to the committee. So you have to look at who am I now? And then continually remind yourself, no, who I am now is I can do this. I can do this. And here's an extra piece that is going to make everyone happy. People say, I can talk one-to-one. How come I can't talk to a large group? So here's the thing. If you can speak well one-to-one, write the same talk as if you're talking to one person. And let's say you're talking to 100 people, but only 3 show up. It would be easy for you because you easily talk to 3s, and you would probably just kind of get down and talk to them normally, right? The way you do talk to 3. You wouldn't be, giving a speech that has to be a whole bunch better than who you are. You would just communicate your ideas. Well, here is the punchline. The whole room is a bunch of threes walking in together. So every time you just look at one three and explain it to them for about 5 seconds. And then you look at another three and don't look at anyone else. I still do this. And my self-talk as I start getting anxious, because it will happen to you too, is I am speaking, and my self-talk is, you're good to one and one to three. Just do what you always do. That is the mantra that will make everyone on this call be able to rehearse. When you rehearse, imagine looking at 3 people, or if you're at Zoom, you have to look at the camera, not at the people. And on Zoom, all I have to do is visualize 1 or 3 or whatever your comfort number is, and tell them in the same way that you always do. There is no such thing as a big group being different, and I have to be like one of those fancy talks. No one's there for a TED Talk. You're there for your content.
Mm-hmm. Very well said. I love that advice. Great advice for our listeners today. What if your material is boring? What should we do then?
Then you have to think of analogies. The best way to make your stuff come alive is to talk to people not in your field. Well, you can talk to people in your field and say, how do you explain this? And at least one of them is going to say, oh, I talk about when my younger sister was, and it's some story. And guess what? You're speaking to different people. And you can say, I once knew I knew of a young person who, and you tell their story to get through it. I also find it valuable to speak to people who are not in your field, because they'll think of something. They'll go, oh, isn't this kind of like, and it's like brilliant, but I wouldn't have thought of it. For everyone listening, you know how easy it is to improve someone else's writing and how hard it is to do your own. Do not write anything in isolation. Put down an outline of what you're going to cover, and then show that to other people and say, how would you explain main point 2?
Great advice. And you know what? Good speakers are master storytellers. And ultimately, that's how you get through that program. I mean, try not to have too much text on those slides. It's really images and stories is ultimately the way that you're going to be a great speaker. And really, those images up on the slide, that just helps to keep you on track. So that way you ultimately get those learning objectives accomplished, right? You stay on track as opposed to getting lost in the weeds. But really good speakers, and you can watch a million of them on TED Talks, they just are master storytellers. And that is really the secret, is explaining something to somebody else in a way that they can understand, just like Dr. Woolf is alluding to, that, maybe it's another industry, maybe it's, some other way of thinking, but using that story to illustrate your point. And I think those are all really, really good. I know you have something else you want to talk about too, Dr. Woolf, I'm sure.
Well, let's talk about the second wacko thing that goes into our brains, because we're human and we're flawed humans.
Right.
And if you forgive everyone else for being flawed, but not yourself, I want you all to work on that, because that is crazy. If all humans are flawed, so are you, and you have to forgive yourself as much as you forgive other people. So here's the deal. You know how when you're talking to your friends and you say the wrong day, you say it's Wednesday. No, it's Thursday. Or you say the wrong time, and we'll be there at 3. No, get there at 2:00. You know how you just fix mistakes and keep going with you're not saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I made a mistake. So you don't bring any attention to it. There's no drama.
Right.
Do the same thing when you're speaking.
Yep.
It's exactly the same. Watch the people that you admire as speakers, and you probably never notice them making mistakes because they fix it and keep going.
That's right. That is absolutely the secret.
In your rehearsal, there's no stopping and just let me start over, because there's no such thing as perfection. There are many parts of your work that have to be done perfectly. Speaking is not in that list.
Great advice. I really, really like that. I also, when looking at speakers, sometimes I'll hear a speaker come up on stage and they'll say, they'll immediately apologize. They'll be like, I'm not really feeling well today. And you're like, what? That's the first thing that you're going to tell me, is that you're not feeling well? You know what I mean? Like, just get up there and do your thing. Like, nobody cares. Just do your thing. Nobody would even know if you're sick or not. Just don't even apologize and just get into your program and do your thing. I mean, it's just tough. When I hear that, I'm like, oh, what a turnoff.
Would you like me to give you a practical idea for when you're at work and you have to deliver someone else's talk?
Yeah, what do you do?
Boss is sick and he says, you deliver the talk. So I would open up with the opener to grab their attention and then say, I'm going to speak today about blah, 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 blah. When you have questions, ask me. I raise my hand to model that. And or on Zoom, when you have questions, either hit the hand or write in the chat. And I will answer it, or I'll get together with my boss and get back to you. So look, I'm saying the same thing, but I made it so that it's only valuable to them.
Perfect. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, a lot of our listeners right now, they are thinking about their careers. They want to move up in their careers. They want to get noticed in their first job. What tips do you have for them?
Before every meeting and every connection with anyone at work and every customer and everybody, think, I know I'm not supposed to speak today, but what might they turn to me and ask? And then you write a few bullets on a sticky and you put that next to your camera on Zoom, or you carry it with you. I usually write in pencil so no one can see my notes. And I just have it near me. So if you can anticipate the kinds of things they might ask. And if they don't, who cares? But the point is, you will have more confidence when you go into the meeting, because mostly what we do is say, oh my God, I hope they don't turn to me and ask, and we leave it at that. And I'm saying, think of all the things, all the horrible things that could happen at the meeting and plan for it, plan what you might say. And then when you don't have enough information, say, I'm going to look that up for you and I'll get back to you. I'll blast it to everybody in the meeting. Look at that smile. Inside, I want to throw up. You understand? That's a big thing. People say, oh, when I first start with people, I say, show me what you look like when you're confident. And they go, I say, do that. Doesn't matter how you feel inside. No one cares, because everyone, in the first 5 minutes, they're more scared. And then, which is normal, speaking fear, not anxiety. And then after that, you're more relaxed and you just kind of talk. So take 5 minutes later, you and do that from the start.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. What about those folks that do get lost in the weeds? I mean, how do you stop rambling and how do you get concise? How do you get to the point?
The worst sin of all these days is rambling, because you're saying what they need to know, and then you're adding things that you should tell them, and then you're adding some things you kind of like them to know. And what I say is, tell only your needs to know. And when you catch yourself going off with other things, as soon as you notice it, stop. And I'd strongly suggest, if there's someone at work or at school that you trust, say to that person, sit across from me at the meeting. And when I start to ramble, touch your ear, or have some signal so you know to pull it together. And after a while, you'll start getting better at knowing that. Most people, when they write, and there are certain categories of different kinds of work that there's more frequent, but most people, when they write everything they know. People are not interested in everything you know. They want to know what they want to know, and then they want you to be quiet so they can go back to work.
Amen. Amen. Now, a lot of the students that I listen to when they get up on stage, they start saying things like, all of these filler words, and that really just cues in to everybody that you're really uncomfortable there. So how do you stop saying these filler words?
The antidote is to insert silence. It's easier to insert silence than to take out the ums and uhs and all of those. The reason we don't want to be silent and why we say things is that when we're silent and stop to think, your mind thinks 4 times faster than you speak. And if you're silent, it'll be, like, record yourself when you're speaking sometime, even at school, to someone to record you or at work. And I want you to notice that when you're thinking of the next thing to say, time it. It's a second, but it feels like 10 seconds. And that's why we go, I can't be silent. They'll think I don't know what I'm talking about, that I've lost my place. So trust it. And in rehearsal, when you're stopping to think, train yourself to do it in silence. When you check your notes, do it in silence. It's a habit to develop.
I think that is excellent, excellent advice. I love it. And what about diplomatic wording for sensitive issues? Sometimes we speak on difficult topics here at Greek University. We talk about things like sexual assault. Maybe we even talk about political issues if there's something going on in the news right now from time to time that lends itself to the discussion. So, how do we use diplomatic wording around these sensitive issues?
You talk to someone who you admire that they're diplomatic, and you say, "Here's what I was fixing to write." Sorry, I'm living in Texas now. I have to use one.
That's all
This
right.
is what I'm planning on saying. How can I say this more dramatically? And they'll just spit it out because that's what they do and say, "Could I learn this?" Plus, I would Google, "How can I become a more diplomatic writer?" and teach yourself.
Very good. I like it. Now, what if somebody in our audience wants to get a TEDx talk? I'm sure we've all seen these TEDx talks that get millions and millions of views, and maybe we're dreaming about, being the next whatever.
Mhm.
What is the best way to get a TED talk if we have perfected our skills?
I will tell you exactly. First of all, you write a 15-minute talk. And it's not a TED talk yet. It has to be really superb. What all of us do who are professional speakers is we give that talk for free like 50 times. So you call up your friends and say, "Hey, listen, I'll come over to your workplace and do a lunchtime free." But I'm at the end, I'm asking people to do a survey of what parts did they like the best, what parts should I leave out, should I switch things around? And that way you get a really tight talk. As far as securing the talk, it's easy nowadays. They're all over the place. So just look in your local community, apply to all of them. It doesn't matter which one you get, because the only thing that counts, probably more than your college degree, is that on your resume you say TEDx talk, here's the link.
I love it. Yeah, that's one
I,
of those
I,
things.
I want to tell
Um,
you one more thing, and that
Go
is I
for it.
want to tell you that you hear how I know a lot of stuff?
Uh-huh.
I put everything into a book that is easy pie to read. I wrote a book that will make anyone, well, I'll tell you this. When I've given my book to people, it's a new book. When I've given it to people, they afterward they say, "I can be an excellent speaker. You told me how to write, how to make important things stand out, how to deal with fear." So I wrote first how to be an excellent speaker because I taught that forever and that's what I made people do. And I've included 45 tips on stopping public speaking fear.
Woo, I absolutely love it. What's the name of
It's
that
on
book?
Amazon and Kindle. And oh, I'm so glad you asked.
There it is. Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. Dr. Reesa Woolf. Go and pick that up on Amazon today. The easiest way to learn the hardest subject. I think it's fantastic. And we do love Austin, Texas. I mean, don't apologize for fixing to do something. I
Oh
mean,
no,
it's
I'm
just
loving it.
I mean, Austin, Texas, that's the sibling to Nashville, Tennessee, where I live. And when you
Yes,
want great food, where do you go in town in Austin? So that way I can get a great meal next time I'm speaking on a college campus there.
there's a place that you like barbecue, I
Oh,
assume.
of course. I live in Nashville. Who doesn't like barbecue?
Oh God, I used to work when I traveled for work training all over the country and the world. So this is part of my self-actualization. I had a goal in my 20s. I love to travel. I'd like to travel the world and have someone else pay for it. So I worked for a seminar company, and I've been in Egypt and it's been I lived in Rome for 3 months doing it. Okay, just to let you know, people, that I'm very committed to self-actualization. And so anyway, in Austin, if you like barbecue, there's a place that has beef ribs, but Texas style. So it's not as so the punchline of that was I really love Nashville. Oh my God.
Me too.
It was like, yeah, I'll work there. Yeah, I'll take that gig.
I'll
Here
take that gig every
to
time.
go back. Good food and really, really smart and capable people. So good for you. And so there's a place here called Iron Works. Iron Works. It's right near the convention center.
Mhm.
Even saying it makes me salivate.
You know it's good when that's happening because there are certain cities when I fly into that literally my mouth starts watering as the plane is coming down, and I'm like, I know what I'm getting in about 10 minutes. And so I know what you're talking about, and that's fantastic. I'm definitely going to check it out next time I'm in Austin, and maybe we'll go get some barbecue together. What do you think about that?
Do you think that there's any hesitation on my part? And to hang out with Mike and to eat the best ribs in Austin, Texas,
That's right.
I would call that equal to my birthday.
All right, then it's a deal. All right, so if our listeners, if they want coaching with you, mentorship for their public speaking, maybe they want to go and buy your new book, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear, or perhaps they want to invite you to speak on their college campus, how can they connect with you?
I'm easy to find. Look up Reesa Woolf, PhD. It'll be on your site, I presume, and my website will be on there. The big thing is start with the book. The book will mostly teach you what you want to know. It's comprehensive, but I have to tell you how I wrote it, because why I wrote it was about 2 years ago. I went, good people around the world aren't speaking up, and it's probably because of public speaking fear is so pervasive. And so what I did was I wrote it as a parable. So it's Mr. Bear says to someone on the job, I have to give this speech, I'm so scared. And then he goes to different people who teach him different things. But I personally don't like learning from a book that's a story. What I like is bullets. So at the end of each chapter, it summarizes the high points in bullets. And then there's one under that, it says, Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. And it has a list of each one of the tips to get over public speaking fear under that one. It is a killer book. It's the best speaking book on the market. I can tell you that, because the rest of them are academic.
I understand completely.
Sorry, don't do that at work. Don't do that at school.
Don't do that at work.
This is me talking to Mike.
Yeah, listen, I totally get it. I mean, our first two books, they're just, aimed at regular people. I mean, to read academic writing just gets really old really fast. And so just make a book for the people. And I think you've done that with Mr. Bear Speaks Without Fear. So good for you. And I'm going to make sure that all of our students listening, anybody who wants to improve their public speaking skills, go and buy that book on Amazon today. You won't be sorry. And Dr. Woolf, what can I say? You are fantastic. You are a bundle of joy. Thanks so much for being on the show with us today.
Certainly my pleasure.
Fantastic. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Dr. Woolf, make sure that you like it. Make sure you share it on social media with all of your other college friends that want to improve their public speaking skills. And we are looking forward to seeing you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks again for joining us, and we are going to see you next time.